My friends, it is time for some more hashtag garment archaeology, but this time it's a little bit different. I want to actually show you through what I have found on this particular piece of fast fashion and point out the red lights, if you will, as to what tells me that this is a poor quality item. Because when you really start to look at garment construction, be it in thrifted items or items you sew yourself, it helps you understand how you can make better choices in your own sewing and get more and more professional looking garments every time. Welcome! It is so lovely to see all your smiling faces again. Well, we have a video today. So this one was very spur of the moment. What I want to do is actually point out to you all of the things that, well, that tell me that this item is really poor quality. So this started as a Monday mending project, and it just turned into me roasting all of the things that I didn't like, that I found that were just not good garment construction. And I put the question out there to you all on Instagram and Facebook, and well, it was pretty unanimous that you were really what in taking a deep dive and a good look at garment construction to know sort of what to look for, what points, what things might actually constitute sort of poor quality, how to fix them, what is worth fixing, what is not worth fixing, and just generally like how to identify and how to do better in your own sewing as well. Because it's one thing to know what to do, it gives another perspective when we know what not to do as well, and seeing the results of where corners are cut in our sewing. And in any sewing projects, any garments being made up, when corners are cut, this is what happens, and this is the kind of result that you get. So basically this is to look at, say, poorer quality garments like this, that you can know what to do better yourself in your own sewing, and so that you can see what might happen if you do start cutting those corners. And well, it just always, I think, for me, makes me want to do better and better in my own sewing to up my game. So this item I have here is, of course, a fast fashion piece from the thrift store. Now, I was Monday mending this one, as I said, because 3 buttons fell off. Now, they were decorative buttons, so they weren't even holding anything on, but of course they still fell off. Poor quality, number 1. 3 buttons falling off? Yeah. Okay, let's take a look, and I want this to actually be a 2-part video. This one I'm going to point out all of the things that are wrong so you can really get an idea of what to look for and what I found. And then I'm going to make a second part to this video where I will look at how I could actually fix these. What could I fix? What couldn't I fix? What's worth it? What's not? But first, let's go through all of the things with this one that I found. So first up, I have actually already replaced the buttons, but then I stopped because I knew that I wanted to make this video, and I will further fix the buttons a little bit, but more on that later. So originally there were 3 buttons that fell off. So when all of the buttons just fall off randomly all the time, you know that that is probably not good quality. So let's start at the top and work our way down, because that always makes sense to me in looking at garments. So another thing that really struck me about this particular piece is the back neckline here. So you can see all of the waves through here, and it's just like, even if it has a neckline in here, it's still wavy through here. So this neckline has been stretched out. So, sign of not good quality. Why is this one like this? I think that this neckline looks like this because of the fabric choices. So this is a knit fabric. It's fairly sturdy knit. It's not super stretchy, but it is quite stretchy. And it's for a jacket. Usually jackets are made out of something more structured, more tailored. So having a knit fabric is probably not the best of choices, but why this is stretched out more, because this is a really hard spot to not stretch in a knit fabric, because you have so many seams here that every time you sew a seam, you're slightly stretching it every time. So you're adding more and more sort of pull and stretch to it every single time. And so it would be really hard to actually get this area in a knit fabric to not do this. So because you've got one stitching of the actual garment together, and then you've got this top stitching as well holding it in place. So it's a tricky thing to do. Really perhaps should have had more stay tape or better interfacing, or it needed to be stabilized a lot more than what it was. But this is, it is what it is. Also on the back here, it's doing something weird thing with the like shoulder pad. Yeah, they've just put it in and it's like bubbling again. It's kind of stretched around a bit and it's just not sitting really nicely. Oh, the lapels here. I don't know how well this one is going to show up on camera, so you might just have to believe me. So looking at the lapels here, you can start to see, particularly down here, these bubbles. Now these bubbles down here is actually the interfacing bubbling away from the fabric. Yeah, so it's just a sign of poor quality fusing. So perhaps they didn't pre-wash the fabric and it has shrunk a little bit. And maybe the fusing, when they fused it, the fabric's shrunk at the same time, and so it creates those sort of bubbles. There's a few reasons why that might have happened. And also the way that they have just kind of pressed this very fast, very not taking attention to detail, and why you can see the actual seam line all the way through. So you end up with this stripe right through the lapel. And the lapels are like front and center, so anything here really stands out. When you can see your seam line down there, not a really good quality. It's not attention to detail. So let's keep moving on. That really tells me that it's made quite fast with no thought to the little details like that. Moving on just down to the lapel a little bit further, you can see they have not understitched anything down here, and so the facing is actually rolling out and you can see it from the outside on both sides. So that's just, again, they're just cutting corners by not understitching. You just don't get those nice neat finishes, and then you end up with seams, facings all coming through, and Moving on, the next thing I really noticed, actually this probably isn't in order, but it's in order of that I'm doing it from top to bottom. Under the welt pocket here, so you have your little welt. It's just like, look at this. This makes me sad. So it just needs to obviously be pressed up correctly, but even with a press, it's just not going to sit very nicely. I think, again, this is a bad choice to do this type of pocket on a knit fabric. It's just not fused enough. It's just a bad choice. You've got a few puckers around the welt pocket, which of course you're just going to have in a poorer quality item, whereas in a better choice of fabric as well is easier to not get those little corners and tucks showing that are just, it's just all the little things that add up, right? So next is the buttons themselves. They don't match up. So when I had these on here originally, they're not evenly spaced. So they're not the same distance apart, and they're not the same distance from the seam line on each side. So not sort of paying extra care to making sure buttons and things line up. I mean, that's a really easy thing to do, but it's something that gets skipped a lot in fast fashion. And of course the buttons are only held on sort of in a single little stitch that makes them wobble around, and with the shank on them, it means they move and they fall, and it's not nice. There are better ways that these could have been attached so that they at least, using the same items, but they could at least sit a little bit more flatter and look nice all the time. So on the sleeve here, again, this is, again, I noticed underneath here, you can see how unevenly the lining has been eased into the cuff to fit. You can see over here, we've got heaps of little gathers and everything that are all pulling in. It's like extra eased in there, and then no ease over here. So basically what they've done is just kind of forced the sleeve lining to fit inside here. This is maybe not a bigger deal, but it is all the little things that add up that just make it not so great a quality garment. And to me, it's really about all these little things that make the big difference, right? It's paying attention to the garment construction and looking at the finishes in particular that make a great garment or not. And this is something that I really try and instill upon my students at Vintage Sewing School. And it's the kind of content that we go really deep in, is how to get better, more professional looking garments with paying attention like this. It's those vintage techniques that you find that when people paid attention to their clothing more and put more effort in, that just make the big difference. So if you are interested in joining, if you really want to take your sewing skills to the next level and really go deep on topics like this, then please, I invite you to come join me at vintagesewingschool.com, because this is what we do all of the time there. Okay, last one. So I think it's the last one. This one was probably the biggest one for me that got me, couldn't feel, yeah. Anyway, okay, so let me just show you. After looking at all this, I then sort of looked down here and realized that the hem line here is actually poking out underneath where the... I'm making so much noise. That was you? Did you hear that scratching sound? Yeah. So the actual hem allowance is folding down past where it should. It's just basically, releasing down. Now to me, this is a big one. So I thought, why? Why is that happening? Because it should definitely not be happening. That is definitely case in point for a poor quality garment. Well, when I looked in closer, you can tell straight away the hem has actually not been sewn up to the outer garment at all. So, you've got your hem folded up. It is not actually fastened to the garment at all. It is only anchored at the seam lines through here. I imagine they have stitched it up just on the seam lines, and it's only being anchored at those particular points. And so that means on an area like this front, where it is the whole front seam with no anchor point, this is just falling down like this, and when you're wearing it. So you're just never going to get that nice crisp look that you really should along a hemline, and that is just absolute telltale that this is a poor quality item. So in jackets, the way that this is constructed is a way that is done so that they can do it purely on a sewing machine. Very fast, very efficient of course, but it doesn't really leave the nicest of looks at the end. And well, this is the result. So those are a few things that I found on this garment just by not even looking really closely that really tell me that it is a poor quality item that has been put together really fast, that corners have been cut, so there is no stay stitching along the neckline here, no extra support for this particular fabric. So considerations to the fabric haven't really been made very well. Case in point with the neckline, case in point with actually just about everything, the cuffs and how it's all eased in everywhere. You've actually got that difference everywhere because it's a knit fabric and a non-knit lining, so they're all stretching and not stretching differently, so that poses lots of different problems. This is just one example of some things to look for, just these things that I've found on this particular garment that really I think that could have been done better. And that leads into the video that I'm going to do next week actually, and I'm going to talk about more in depth about maybe how you could fix these particular things, just as an example, because we all come across these same items all the time at the thrift store. And you really want to know, can you fix it or can you not? What's worth it and what's not investing the time to do? That will be the topic of next week's video. I'm going to try and do 2 videos a week. I'm doing an experiment. So join me for this one will be Tuesday video. I'm going to do something a little bit different, and then our regular videos will be on Fridays. So I'm pretty excited about that. Do let me know what questions come up for you about this, because I think this is a big topic that we could go a lot on in looking at garment construction and pointing out things in different garments of what could be done differently. So let me know all of the questions that you have around this, what you want to know, what you want to learn about this. Please leave those comments below because I love reading them. It gives me the idea to do them just like this video came from your comments. So thank you very much for watching as always, and until next week, happy sewing. Bye.